Ciphers of Time, Awakening the Legacy. Chapter 7, Vishwa the Swamiji. After an intense and grueling debate, Manu and Shantanu are left with no other choice but to return to the very place where their nightmare began. It's a desperate move, but their only hope at this point. With Shantanu inhabiting yet another body, they set off towards the dark and foreboding forest once again, determined to uncover any clue or perhaps even someone who can provide crucial information about their surroundings. "Are you sure this is the right way?" Shantanu asked, his voice betraying the strain of their predicament. "Positive," Manu replied, though his certainty was less about direction and more about the necessity of their quest. They'd circled back to theories and fears all night, each idea more desperate than the last. And yet, here they were, plunging deeper into the forest on a hunch, driven by the gut feeling that somewhere in these woods lay an answer to the chaos entwining their lives. Just as they reached the camping spot, out of nowhere, a deep and harsh cough shattered the peacefulness around them, causing Manu to swiftly turn around. He couldn't react fast enough as he saw Shantanu bend over in pain. A spray of dark red blood splattered onto the ground, covered in fallen leaves. Before Manu could even reach out to help, his brother's legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the forest floor. "Shantanu!" Manu's shout echoed off the trees as he dropped to his brother's side, hands trembling as he sought for a pulse, for any sign of life. "Help! We need help!" His voice felt thin in the vastness of the wilderness. Panic gripped his chest until he noticed some movement. A group of individuals relaxing in the cool shade of a towering banyan tree, not too far from where tragedy had occurred. With a rush of adrenaline, Manu lifted Shantanu's unconscious body onto his shoulder and raced towards the group. "Please, is there a hospital nearby? My brother, he's not well." The people under the tree turned as one, their faces etched with calm curiosity rather than alarm. The group was an odd mix, with some dressed in simple and humble clothes, while others wore their usual everyday attire. They stood together, calmly focused amidst the chaos around them. "Brother," one of them addressed Manu, rising gracefully to his feet, "we are far from the conveniences of modern medicine here. But tell us, what ails him?" "Blood," Manu gasped, laying Shantanu down with care. "He vomited blood and passed out. He needs a doctor, now." The group exchanged knowing glances before the same man spoke again, his words measured and eyes piercing. "We must be swift then. Our ways are different, but we understand the fragility of life." Manu's heart hammered in his chest, hope mingling with fear. Are these strangers capable of saving Shantanu, or was he clutching at straws? Manu's gaze locked onto the leader, a familiar serenity carved into his ageless features. The words tumbled out, heavy with an ominous certainty that shook Manu to his core. "I told you, Manu, this problem is beyond your imagination. Your brother Shantanu is in the body of a person who has blood cancer and might die anytime. I warned you about the problem, and you ignored it." Recognition dawned on Manu like the slow, painful crawl of sunrise after a night of despair. It was Swamiji Vishwa, one of the 5 they had sought for guidance before their paths turned to this unfathomable journey. "Swamiji, please." Manu's voice cracked as he dropped to his knees beside the still form of Shantanu. "You have to help us. There must be something, anything we can do. A hospital, medicine, a cure." Vishwa's eyes held a depth of ancient knowledge, unswayed by the plea. His head shook with finality, and his words fell like stones into the pit of Manu's stomach. "It is useless, Manu. This man's journey is at its end, and in a few hours so too shall his life ebb away. We cannot change what is fated." The stark declaration cut through the forest's ambient symphony. Manu clutched at Shantanu's hand, seeking some anchor in the maelstrom of emotions that threatened to engulf him. Tears blurred his vision as he looked up at the Swamiji, his face contorting with grief. "Please," he whispered through sobs that racked his body, a desperate sibling clutching at the thin strands of hope, knowing all the while that they were slipping through his fingers. "Please don't let him die." The group around them watched in silence, their presence like sentinels to the unfolding tragedy, witnesses to a sorrow as old as time itself. Manu's tears soaked the earth, his cries a mournful for a brother's life hanging in the balance, for a promise of protection he could not keep. Vishwa's voice, steady and imbued with an unspoken power, cut through the cacophony of Manu's grief. As your brother is innocent and has nothing to do with this man's fate, I can help you with this. Manu's tear-filled eyes widened in a mixture of hope and confusion as he watched the Swamiji step forward. Vishwa gently guided Shantanu, who was still convulsing from the shock of his borrowed body's ailment, into a seated position on the forest floor. With a firm but compassionate touch, he positioned Shantanu's legs into a cross-legged posture and placed his hands lightly on his knees. Sit straight, Vishwa instructed, his tone soft yet commanding. He then held Shantanu's right hand, closing his own eyes as if to draw upon some unseen force within or beyond them. Manu observed, his breath caught in his throat, his heart racing with equal parts dread and anticipation. The rest of the group remained silent, their eyes fixed on the ritual unfolding before them, their faces inscrutable masks carved by time and secrets. The Swamiji leaned close to Shantanu's ear, his lips moving silently as he began to chant. It was a sound that seemed to resonate with the surrounding trees, a mantra that carried the weight of centuries. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the energy of Vishwa's words, the syllables foreign yet somehow familiar to Manu. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the only sound being the rhythmic cadence of Vishwa's chanting. Then suddenly, as if a string had been cut, Shantanu's body slumped to the side, lifeless. A gasp escaped Manu's lips, his mind reeling with fear. But before panic could fully take hold, something miraculous happened. The sick host, the true owner of the body that Shantanu had inhabited, stirred. His eyes fluttered open, filled with confusion and pain, but unmistakably alive. Where am I? The man croaked, his voice hoarse. Manu stood frozen, unable to reconcile the impossible scene before him. His gaze shifted from the sick man, now coughing weakly, to Vishwa, who stood serene and untroubled by the dramatic turn of events. Get him to the hospital, Vishwa said calmly, addressing Manu while gesturing toward the revived man. Then return home and check on Shantanu's body. Bewilderment etched into every line of his face. Manu nodded mechanically, his mind struggling to catch up with Vishwa's instructions. There was no time for questions, no space for doubt. With a newfound urgency, Manu scooped the frail figure of the sick man into his arms and hurried towards the nearest help, every step fueled by the lingering echo of Vishwa's mystic chant and the slim hope that his brother might have returned to where he truly belonged. Manu's heart thrummed with anticipation as he threw open the door of the apartment. Shantanu? His voice echoed, a mix of hope and desperation clinging to the syllables. There on the low divan in the dimly lit room lay the still figure of his brother. He slowly approached Shantanu's body and patted him. Shantanu's fingers started moving, a gentle flutter like the first notes of awakening. The room held its breath as the once still body showed the hint of consciousness. It was unmistakably him, his brother, back in his own body. Shantanu! The name burst from Manu's lips like a prayer answered, relief flooding his veins as he knelt beside him. At the sound of Manu's voice, Shantanu stirred, his eyelids fluttering open to reveal a glint of recognition. Manu. There was a rasp in his voice, but it was laced with the warmth of familiarity. Yes, it's me. You're back. You're really back. Manu clasped Shantanu's hand, his own trembling with unshed tears of joy. The bond between them, stretched thin by worry and the events of the past days, now felt restored, stronger than ever. Back? Confusion knit Shantanu's brow for a fleeting moment before clarity dawned in his eyes. Vishwa? He did it? Manu nodded fervently. He saved you. I don't know how, but he brought you back. A slow smile spread across Shantanu's face, a reflection of the radiant relief that suffused Manu's being. They sat in silence, soaking in the reality of their reunion, the weight of fear and uncertainty melting away under the comforting canopy of their shared home. As the initial wave of emotion subsided, Manu's thoughts turned to the future, to the unfinished business that tugged at the edges of his consciousness. I need to thank Vishwa, he said, more to himself than to Shantanu, and then I'll ask him to help me too. Help you? Shantanu's query was tinged with concern, the protective instinct kicking in despite his own ordeal. I need to return to my life in London, to Vamala. Manu's gaze drifted, picturing his wife's face, the life they'd built. But not until this is resolved, not until I'm sure the curse is lifted. Tomorrow then, Shantanu agreed, his voice firm with resolve. We'll seek out Vishwa together. We'll end this, once and for all. Their plans set, they allowed themselves the luxury of rest, the house enveloping them in an embrace of timeless tranquility. For the first time in what felt like centuries, Manu slept without the specter of dread looming over him, secure in the knowledge that the morning would herald a new chapter in their extraordinary tale.